Now, Executive Suite with WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi.
Welcome to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi. Well, we can sometimes, I think, overlook it, those of us lucky enough to live in Rhode Island and southeastern Massachusetts, that we live in a very desirable part of the world to visit, to come to live and to work and to play. And the people who do tourism, though, they're well aware of it and they're always marketing it. And today we're talking to one of the chief marketers of Rhode Island who get people out there, Kristen Adamo. She is president and CEO of the Providence, Warwick Convention and Visitors Bureau. Just became the CEO after a number of years there in other executive positions, including as the spokesperson, which is how I know you. Congratulations on the big promotion.
Thank you. The title still sounds weird, so that's how you know I'm new.
The CEO. Now you're truly in the executive suite with the CEO. I love it. Okay. So first off, I know this as a reporter. There's lots of different groups and offices and things that do tourism stuff in Rhode Island. Your group, Providence, Warwick Convention and Visitors Bureau. Can you just help people understand how you guys fit into the tourism picture and what your role is?
So what we do, I always like to start big and go smaller. So one of the divisions that we have is the Rhode Island Sports Commission, and we book sporting events across the state. So that can be anything from March Madness that people know to volleyball tournaments that take up, every hotel room we can find, or hockey tournaments that take up sheets of ice. We're working on Quidditch, all sorts of things.
Wow.
There's something for everyone, Ted. We also book meetings and conventions, primarily at the convention center, sometimes the Dunkin' Donuts Center, and with the hotels in Providence and Warwick. And then we also market Providence as a leisure tourism destination. And a lot of people, while they don't see a lot of the work that we do because it goes outward, we're trying to get people here, probably know our website, goprovidence.com, and some of the events we do, like Providence Restaurant Weeks.
Yeah, and it's external-facing stuff that, as you say, your job is not to be talking to Rhode Islanders. We're already here.
Exactly.
It's to talk to folks who might have a vague familiarity or none at all and get them. Like, I know you talk to journalists who do travel magazines, let's say. You bring them in, right, to show them, hey, you should write about us.
We do. We host between 50 and 100 travel journalists a year, just my team, which is basically 2 people. And we have had everyone from that CNN article that you probably saw a couple months ago. We just had the Washington Post in a couple weeks ago, so we'll be tracking that. We've got a big article in Travel and Leisure that's coming out in August.
Does it work? So you bring someone in and maybe they're not sure if they're going to write a story about Providence or not, and then you take them around, they say this place, it does work?
We try to vet it because we need to use our money responsibly. So we try to, first of all, make sure that the report is legitimate, and then we look at, are they on assignment? If not, are they a really good freelancer? A lot of times we'll work with the same people. The CNN story that everyone loved, that's a woman named Lily Marcus who we've been working with for probably 10 years. And that one came out of the blue. She actually visited the year before. So sometimes it's relationship building, and sometimes it's just being really careful.
I need to switch which part of journalism
I do.
Yours, yours seems like a lot more fun. One thing we should say is you're not a government office.
We are not. We are a 501c6. We're funded a lot of different ways. The bulk of it will be hotel taxes. And so we have our own board of directors, and we don't report to any city or government agency.
So we're already talking about it. When you think, again, so for people at home, they're already here, they might have friends and family who visit, but when you sit back and you think, who is my target audience? Who do I think I can get to come to Rhode Island? Who do you think? Is it just drawing people in from Mass and Connecticut and New York? Is it going, hey, come to the East Coast from the West Coast? Kind of who do you see as your prime targets?
We have to work within our budget. So the great thing about advertising is if you had $1 million, you could spend $1 million. We don't. So what we do is we try to be really smart with what we do. So we do a lot of electronic things because they're cheaper and they're easier to track. And we really focus on that northeastern drive market. I think it's something like 20% of the U.S. population lives within 300 miles of Rhode Island. So you're talking Philadelphia, Boston, New York, New Jersey. So those are our sweet spots. But we've also seen a great lift in Baltimore and Washington, and that's the cheap flight. So we really target that geographic area more than anywhere else. And we look at usually younger people. For Providence, it's someone who's probably more urban and really likes the city experience and art and good food. So, and you can do a lot of that creepy target marketing through electronic media. So we can be very smart with our dollars.
So you Googled Providence and now suddenly your Facebook's full of Providence,
exactly.
Right? That is a little creepy, but it probably works, right?
It does.
So what, you're going to keep doing it. I want to ask you about the place those people stay, which is hotels. I'm amazed, we're taping this in spring of 2019, at the number of hotels either just opened, being built, or in the pipeline in Providence right now. And a lot of people are talking about that and saying, is there going to be enough demand? Where's this coming from? How do you view this sort of I don't know, would you call it a boom?
It's absolutely a boom. We've been tracking 8 projects, hotel development projects, just in Providence. That doesn't include things that are happening in Warwick or Aquidneck Island. 2 of those have opened, which is Wood Spring and Homewood Suites. Residence Inn is slated for this fall, but there are other properties that are in the pipeline as well. And we get calls every day with people doing due diligence. We've had hotel speculators say that we're a red hot market. So
why?
Because of our occupancy rate. So we ended our last fiscal year at about 74.2 or 3% occupancy. So that means we were 3/4 full on any given night of the year. That's
now people might
really
think,
high.
So is that, and I want to get you to explain that because you know it so well. Because people hear it and they're like 74%. You know, it's only a C in a letter grade. So in the hotel world, is like, how does that fit in when they look at what's a good occupancy?
That's really strong. I mean, you're lucky. 60 and change is usually the national average. So we are outperforming above average. We also do really well with leisure travel, and I don't think people know that. So during, I'd say, May through November, I have the stats on every day of the week, and Saturday nights between May and November we're in the mid-90s for occupancy, above 90 pretty much every Saturday.
Which is super high.
It's you can't find, that means you're sold out.
Yeah,
you're sold out. So there's a need. And what else is great is the mix of hotels that are coming in. So we have like the Residence Inn, the Homewood Suites, or what we call extended stay. So that's for that corporate traveler that may be coming for a week or 2. So it speaks to a different kind of traveler. The other thing is there's a lot of boutique, what we call boutique properties, so cool little funky properties. Like, for example, we have the Dean in the Hotel Providence. So we're going to have more of that stuff. That appeals to younger people. It appeals to people who don't want that Marriott or, that chain hotel experience. So we're just adding to the total package. So it's actually really exciting.
And so you definitely think there's good reason to think, because we never know. Maybe all these hotels get built. Maybe some, stay on the drawing board for a while. But you think there is room for quite a bit of growth in that space.
There is, and we're going to experience it. Those 8 projects account for, I think it's 2,700 rooms that we'll be adding into the market.
And you can already sell that to the conventions and people come in, right? We're going to have more.
We do. I mean, we're cautious. We're selling the Residence Inn, and we started selling the Homewood Suites. And but we do. We book typically 18 months and out. So right now we're looking at 21, 22, 23.
So you're thinking way ahead of the rest of us.
Yeah, exactly.
In your life, it's 2022 already for what you're thinking about.
Yeah.
We have to go to break, but before we do, one other question in the hotel world, which is I'm curious about Airbnb and its competitors. How much is that affecting the ways people, we're going to talk later on about conventions. That's a lot of where people come from. When they're booking, do you see more people saying to themselves, I don't need a hotel, I'm going to do an Airbnb while I'm here? Absolutely.
And we are, my colleague Evan Smith in Newport has done a great job of aggregating how many Airbnbs he has and how it's impacting the economy. And that's one of the first things that we're going to do since I took over, is we're really going to start looking at that and trying to quantify that for Providence. And our footprint's a little different, so it's going to be like Providence, Cranston, East Providence, and just see how many Airbnbs are out there. I had a call from a guy the other day who told me he has 25 Airbnbs in Providence and he can accommodate about 100 people. That's a boutique hotel. So we need to figure out just what we have and then look at how we work with it. Even in something simple as, should we be giving collateral to those places to get people visitor information? And of course the dollar question is always a good topic.
And of course, your hotel partners may not always want you to be too helpful to those folks. There's some sensitivity there. Yeah, interesting. A brave new world on that front. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk more with Kristen Adamo, CEO of the Providence Warwick Convention and Visitors Bureau, including why conventions have become a huge part of their strategy to market Providence. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi. We're talking today about the business of tourism, and that is big business in southeastern New England, especially here in Rhode Island. We're talking to Kristen Adamo. She's the president and CEO of the Providence Warwick Convention and Visitors Bureau. I always have to get the ampersand right because there's not Providence and Warwick. It's Convention and Visitors. We put the other two together. So
you can call us Go Providence if it's easier.
Go Providence.
That's a mouthful.
Maybe that'll get me quicker next time. So I mentioned before the break, I want to talk about conventions. This to me as a business reporter is fascinating because it can be nearly invisible to the average Rhode Islander when some, the International Association of Umbrella Salesmen comes to town. But if they bring thousands of people who go out to restaurants and book hotel rooms, it's a huge business. And you guys have really been focusing on that in recent years.
Absolutely. That is the foundation of our business. And then we layer leisure travel and corporate travel on top of that. Providence is a great meetings and convention destination. So we have a whole sales team, and that's what they do. They're out in all over the country and and bringing meetings and conventions back to Rhode Island. We asked Rhode Islanders to help us. We have a program called Recommend Rhode Island, so we're asking people everyone belongs to something, whether it's a church or a professional organization, so we're asking people to help us and help the economy by bringing meetings and conventions here. And we'll do all the work and they can brag about it, and that's the best deal you get.
Yeah, so, I was looking, you had in your annual report, you looked a bit at the future of these conventions. Just one that stuck out to me as a good example. The Unitarian Church is having an annual meeting, I guess, or something like that. They're coming to Providence. 7,700 room nights attached to that, and like $4 million in expected spending.
That's exactly right. And this isn't the first time that they've been here. I think this is the second time that they've been here. So, and that's the pressure that you're under, too. You want to deliver a good product, and you want to make sure that people will be happy with their experience, because then you get what we call repeat customers. And that's, something like that is an incredible economic benefit to the community.
I remember when I was wearing my political reporter hat when the National Governors Association was in Rhode Island, and I was told by some of their organizers, they meet all over the country, and when they came to Providence, some of the governors came who might not have otherwise, because they actually wanted to see Newport or come to Providence, and so that brought them in too.
That's exactly. We have one coming at the end of June. It's the American Homebrewers Association, so it's people who brew beer, and I think there's like 3,200 of them coming. And I actually went to that conference last year in Oregon. Rough life, I know. But one of the things we were doing is promoting people coming to Providence, and what really struck me was every single person practically I talked to said, "Oh, I'm making that my family vacation."
Yes.
So what they're going to do is they'll stay for 2 or 3 days in Providence, and then they're going to go out and rent a beach house or do something. And they're touring breweries all over the state, and they're getting out into restaurants, and they're bringing buses full of people. So one of the things we're going to do with them is we are going to draw an electronic fence and do something very creepy with cell phone data and see if we can see just how far out they're going to go and how they're enjoying all of Rhode Island, because we want that quantitative data. We want to be able to show people the work that's being done in Providence, and when people come to Providence, it has a statewide effect.
And it just must be efficient, because trying to rope people in one little nuclear family at a time, you have 4 people, you rope in a convention, you have thousands coming.
Right, and then we talked a little bit about sports, and sports is even better, because when you come to a business convention, maybe you come by yourself with a colleague, but with sports, a kiddie baseball team is coming with an entire family. And a lot of the sporting events we do are actually in January and February, and stay in Warwick. So it really moves the needle in times of need.
And also, it gets Warwick, which is, you don't have the convention center there, but it's a way to get people into there. I'm curious, how competitive is it to land conventions?
So it's actually tougher and tougher every year. More cities are building convention centers, and then more cities are expanding their convention center. So we are sort of landlocked, and I will tell you, if you haven't been to the center in a while, they do an amazing job of working with the space that they have. They've turned, closets into rooms, and they've blocked off part of their ground floor and made it into a ballroom. So they're doing the best that they can, and maybe down the road we will expand. But right now, we have to work with what we have. So what we do to remain competitive is we can't be bigger, so we're going to be smarter. And so one of the things we're doing is we are launching a speaker directory. And what we're trying to do is get academics and business people, leaders here in Rhode Island. We have such rich intellectual capital, and we're trying to work with them to place them when we have a meeting and convention here in Rhode Island. It's great for them because it gives them a national profile. It's great for us because it's a service, and then the event planner or meeting planner doesn't have to pay to fly somebody in. So I think it's going to be a win-win, and we're just in the process of kind of aggregating that kind of talent.
I was wondering the same thing. And sometimes when I talk to state officials, there is a little worry about the size of the convention center and whether that could start to be a problem as other cities build them, expand them. I think Boston's been talking about that too. Do you think Rhode Island needs to start to have that conversation?
I think we do, because we are, now, I just told you, we have 2,600 new hotel rooms coming in just Providence. That does not include Warwick. We need to remain competitive, and what is happening is when the center was built in the 90s, there was a way that people met, and it was big halls, and now
ballrooms.
Exactly, and now people are more interested in really interesting breakout space. So I think that's probably a conversation that we're going to have down the road.
And what is the outlook for the next? You mentioned earlier you're
Sure.
looking forward always a couple of
Yep.
years. So right now, mid 2019, this year's were booked long ago, and you're going
Yes.
through that. How are you feeling about the next few years
So-
and having enough of a pipeline?
So 18 was what we call an outlier. We had an amazing year. Occupancy for that fiscal year, as I said, was I think 74.2, 74.3. 19 is going to dip a little bit. We're starting to, the second half is much more robust. It's our busy season in terms of weather. So we're ramping back up. 21, we're at, I think, about 120% of what our booking pace would normally be. And 22, we're at 148%.
Wow.
Yeah, so 22 is just going to be incredible. We have people fighting over space in February.
What's driving that?
You know what? It's cyclical. It's really sort of a cyclical business. And again, sports is red hot. Our location is red hot. And when, the work that we do on the leisure side, people hear about Providence's food and their art scene and all of that impacts the other side. We're a hot city.
I love that. Well, we're overdue for a break, but one quick question I have before we go. On conventions, is it, if let's say there's a downturn in the economy or something, do you find this is a fairly stable business because they planned it so far in advance, people still have them, or do they start canceling? If the economy was softer in 21, do you still think you'd have that many?
We will for 20 and 21, or 21 and 22. Where it becomes an issue is like, say, 8 and 9, we had an economic downturn, so people who were planning things in 11 and 12 were much more cautious. The other trend we're seeing is sometimes people will book a convention and only book a smaller amount of hotel rooms that are contracted because they're nervous. So sometimes it's not the group, it's the shrinking of the hotel footprint.
And the size of it. Interesting. All right, we got to take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk about what Rhode Island is doing right now on its fun-sized tourism campaign with Kristen Adamo, President and CEO of the Providence, Warwick Convention and Visitors Bureau. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi. We're talking today about the business of tourism with Kristen Adamo. She's newly appointed President and CEO of the Providence, Warwick Convention and Visitors Bureau. Kristen, I feel like every time a state leader talks about tourism, an article is written about tourism, the first thing they say is the beaches. We have great beaches.
Yes.
We have great beaches, and we do have great beaches.
We do.
But I'm curious, are there things we might not realize are helpful to you in marketing Providence and Warwick, or when you talk to your peers around the state, things that don't always come right to mind when we think about tourism in Rhode Island that you guys find is a good draw? Sure.
For us, the beaches aren't as big a deal. And I would say, beaches are great, and we do have beautiful beaches, but so does Florida, and so does, a lot of other places. So you have to kind of temper
Tim White
that.
said that to me when I was getting ready to he said, you got to ask her, he's like, aren't there beaches everywhere?
Exactly. So what you have to do, one of the things that we really promote is our size. I think our size is our greatest strength, because you can have dinner in Providence, and then you can go to the beach in South County. You can have dinner in Providence. You can go to the mansions, and it's all within a small area. So that kind of, I think, is one of the attractions that, we really try to push outside this market. Rhode Islanders don't drive anywhere, but most people do. So to drive 45 minutes to go to Newport is not a
It's
big
not
deal.
hardship pay for someone from outside the state like it is for all of us, apparently. You talk about the size of the state. The state, after the cooler and warmer debacle a few years ago, which didn't go so well, they're now fun-sized is the brand, which is kind of cute. They have video ads going and things like that. I know you all have conversations with that's the state tourism office and thing that puts that together. What do you think of that, and has that been, think that's being effective at all?
I do. I think Fun Size is really cute, really clever video-based campaign, and I think it's working well. I think it's moving the needle. What I've really liked since Laura Salamano, I know she's left, but when she came on, there was a concerted effort for all of us to work together and be really unified. We all work amongst ourselves. I might have a reporter in, and I might have them. I have a guy coming in from Ireland. He's coming in for a week. So I called Andrew McHugh in Newport and said, can you take him for a couple days? Jess Willie in Block Island. So we work together anyway, but to have that kind of teamwork with the state has been a lot better. And I know they're looking for a new chief marketing officer. So one of the things I'm really looking at is hoping that they develop an overarching strategy that the rest of us can buy into, because we're the boots on the ground and they're the umbrella.
Well, and that's every year it's been an issue in gubernatorial campaigns. Should there be a stronger statewide, overall tourism approach, but then sometimes the smaller ones get worried they'll be left behind. There won't be people. It'll all be Providence and Newport, right? What do you think? Do you think it's hurting the state right now that it is still relatively bifurcated, or do you think that's overblown?
No, I think the way that almost every state works is you have that umbrella organization, and they sometimes they have things like co-op advertising opportunities that you can buy into, but they always have a brand and a strategy. But they're not going to go and sit with James Mark in North and talk to him and find out what he's doing that gets him a Beard nomination or something. That's something my team does. So you really and that's on the leisure side. The state doesn't do meetings and conventions really. Mm-hmm. So you really have to have people who are embedded in the community to be effective. So I think the people in Block Island and South County and Newport do the same thing. We're the ones who are aggregating everything that is happening, whether it be events or people, stories. We're getting the photos, the video, all of that stuff. And I think there's always going to be a need for that.
If you were queen of Rhode Island tourism for a day and you could order something or make some big sweeping change or add something or whatever, what would you do? What do you think could be like a game changer for tourism?
It's wonky, but I actually have told them this. We have a limited budget, and I can't be in travel and leisure. I don't have the money. I can't be in, New York publications or radio. I'd love to see some sort of an overarching advertising buy, and where I could contribute a little bit of money, and there would be a little bit of messaging about Providence. I think that would be really helpful to all the regions, because we're all working with a limited budget, to be able to work together and be able to be smart financially.
Yeah, do you think that, what if the fun-sized videos were television, like the Michigan ones were for a while or something? Do you think that could be effective?
Yeah, I do. I think television, you have to be careful on how you do it.
Now, careful.
No, let me finish. You can't paint a broad brush. You have to be very specific and match the program or the channel with the right people. But I do think that television is one of the more effective ways of doing it.
We're running short on time, but the Warwick in your title,
yeah.
I have to ask about the airport, of course.
Yes.
How are you feeling these days about TF Green? It does seem like they've been on an upswing after some down years. How are you feeling about the airport?
So they have been instrumental in some of our growth, particularly in the international market. We've seen a lot of growth with the Irish market, but also they are really attractive for meetings and conventions, because what they're doing is they're adding more direct flights. They've added Savannah and New Orleans and all of these places. That makes us a more attractive meeting destination, because when you go to a conference, you don't want to stop in 3 different places. You want to go from A to B. So the work that they're doing, it helps leisure tourism, but it equally helps meetings.
So what worries you? What do you think Rhode Island has to be prepared for, maybe is a better way to put it, as you look out? We ebb and flow with the economy. So if the economy goes down, we'll see things go down. One of the things I am really into right now is crisis planning. You have to worry about that. And I'm not just talking, unfortunately, about acts of nature. You have to worry about active shooters now. And I think a lot of, the Rhode Island Hospitality Association does a lot of work on that in terms of getting people prepared and looking at that. So, I have the worries that I think most people have. Yeah, so there's still the not fun side of it, too, the serious side you have to think about. But a lot of it's fun, it sounds like. A lot of it is fun. It sounds like a good gig to have. Well, Kristen Adamo from the Providence Warwick Convention and Visitors Bureau, congrats again on becoming the CEO. I'm sure we'll be having you back. If you missed any of this show or any other episode of Executive Suite, you can catch them all on our website, WPRI.com. And we're also back on iTunes as a podcast, so subscribe and you can listen on your phone or mobile device or wherever you get those. Otherwise, we'll see you back here next week on Executive Suite.